Byron Calder rode 300 miles to marry a stranger, a promise his dying father made to settle an old debt. He expected duty, a quiet wife, a fresh start on somebody else's land. What he got was Lin Yu, a woman whose beauty stopped the preacher mid-sentence, whose inheritance made grown men nervous, and whose eyes held secrets sharp enough to cut through lies. She didn't need saving, she needed to know if he'd come anyway. And when the past arrived with polished boots and a land deed, Byron had one chance to prove he wasn't just another man who'd take everything and leave nothing behind. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. Hit that like button and let's ride. The sky over Prescott, Arizona territory hung low and colorless the morning Byron Calder arrived. Dust coated everything: the clapboard storefronts, the hitching posts, the tired faces of men who'd spent too many years chasing something they couldn't name. Byron sat his horse at the edge of town, staring at the church with its crooked steeple and wondering what kind of fool rides 300 miles to marry a woman whose name he can barely pronounce. The kind of fool whose father dies with your hand in his, that's who. "You gave your word," his father had rasped, blood flecking his lips. "The Yu family, old debt. You go, you marry the daughter." Byron had nodded because you don't argue with a dying man, even when that man spent his best years drunk and his worst years mean. 3 weeks later, Byron sold what little they had, saddled his horse, and started west. No romantic notions, no expectations, just a promise and the kind of bone-deep weariness that comes from living a life you didn't choose. He dismounted and tied his horse to the rail outside the church. His boots hit the ground with a dull thud. A few townspeople watched from doorways, their curiosity poorly hidden behind squinted eyes and crossed arms. Byron ignored them. He'd been stared at before. Inside, the church was dim and smelled of old wood and candle wax. A handful of people sat scattered across the pews, ranchers by the look of them, sun-worn and silent. At the front, a thin man in a black coat stood with a Bible in his hands, looking uncomfortable. Next to him stood a woman in a simple white dress, her face hidden behind a veil. Byron's stomach tightened. He walked down the aisle, each step echoing too loud in the quiet. When he reached the front, the preacher cleared his throat. "Mr. Calder, I presume?" "Yes, sir." The preacher glanced at the veiled woman, then back at Byron. "We've been waiting." Byron wanted to say he hadn't exactly been dragging his feet, but he kept his mouth shut. The woman stood perfectly still, her hands folded in front of her. He couldn't see her face, couldn't read anything from her posture except a kind of controlled calm that made him uneasy. "Shall we begin?" the preacher asked. Byron nodded. The preacher opened his Bible and started reading in a monotone that suggested he'd done this too many times to care. Byron barely heard the words. His attention kept drifting to the woman beside him. She was small, barely came up to his shoulder, but there was something in the way she held herself that didn't match her size. Solid, grounded. The preacher droned on. Byron repeated the words when prompted, his voice flat. Then the preacher turned to the woman. "Do you, Lin Yue, take this man?" "I do," she said, cutting him off. Her voice was clear, unaccented, firm. Not what Byron expected. The preacher blinked, thrown off rhythm. "Well, then by the power vested in me." "May I?" Lin Yue interrupted again, reaching for her veil. The preacher stammered. Yes, of course." She lifted it. The room went silent. Not the polite quiet of a ceremony, but the kind of stunned silence that happens when something breaks every expectation at once. Byron stared. He couldn't help it. Lin Yu was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness. Sharp cheekbones, dark eyes that didn't waver, black hair pulled back in a severe bun that somehow made her face more striking. But it wasn't just her looks that stopped the room. It was the way she looked back, meeting every gaze with a calm that bordered on defiance. Someone in the back pews shifted. A woman whispered something Byron couldn't hear. Lin Yue didn't flinch. The preacher recovered first, stammering through the final lines. "I now pronounce you man and wife." Byron's hand moved on instinct, reaching for hers. Her fingers were cool, her grip surprisingly strong. She looked at him directly, and for the first time Byron saw something flicker in her expression. Not fear, not hope. Assessment, like she was measuring him for something he didn't understand yet. "Hello, husband," she said quietly. "Ma'am." Byron managed. A few people clapped, half-hearted and awkward. Lin Yu turned and walked back down the aisle without waiting for him. Byron followed, feeling like he'd just signed a contract he hadn't read. Outside, a small group had gathered. They kept their distance, watching Lin Yu with expressions Byron couldn't quite parse. Respect, maybe. Or wariness. One older man stepped forward, hat in hand. Mrs. Calder, congratulations. Thank you, mister. Warren, she said, her tone polite but distant. The man shifted, glancing at Byron. You're a lucky man, Calder. Real lucky. Byron didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Lin Yu moved toward a wagon hitched nearby, climbed up into the seat with practiced ease, and picked up the reins. She looked at Byron. Are you coming, or are you planning to walk? He blinked. I've got my horse. Tie him to the back. It wasn't a suggestion. Byron did as she said, securing his gelding to the wagon, then climbed up beside her. She clicked her tongue, and the horses started forward without hesitation. The town fell away behind them, swallowed by dust and distance. They rode in silence for a long time. The land stretched out flat and endless, broken only by the occasional scrub and distant mesas. Byron watched the horizon, unsure what to say or if he should say anything at all. Lin Yu drove with the kind of easy competence that came from doing something 1,000 times. Her hands were steady on the reins, her eyes sharp on the trail. Finally, Byron cleared his throat. So, your father, he knew mine. They did business together, a long time ago. What kind of business? The kind that leaves debts. Byron frowned. My father didn't have money to leave debts. Not money, Lin Yu said, her eyes still on the road. A promise. He swore his son would marry my father's daughter if she ever needed it. My father held him to that. Needed it, Byron repeated slowly. Why would you need to marry someone like me? She glanced at him then, just a flick of her eyes. What do you think you are, Mr. Calder? Nobody. A ranch hand who lost his job when his boss died. A man with no land, no money, and a father who drank himself into the grave. Exactly, Lin Yu said. The word hit harder than Byron expected. He looked away, jaw tight. So I'm the bottom of the barrel, that it? You misunderstand. Her voice didn't soften, but something in it shifted. I needed someone who would come with nothing to gain. Someone who wouldn't marry me for what I have. Byron stared at her. What you have? She didn't answer. Instead, she turned the wagon off the main trail onto a narrow road that wound through low hills. They crested a rise, and Byron's breath caught. Below them spread a valley so green it looked unreal against the dryness of the surrounding land. Cattle dotted the fields, hundreds of them, fat and healthy. Barns stood in neat rows, fences stretched for miles, well-maintained and strong. And in the center of it all sat a ranch house, not grand but solid, built to last, with smoke rising from its chimney. This, Lin Yu said quietly, is what I have. Byron couldn't speak. He'd seen big ranches before, worked on a few, but this was something else. This was wealth, power, the kind of operation that took decades to build. Your father left you this? My father built it. I've run it for the last 3 years. Byron looked at her sharply. Run it? Yourself? Who else? I don't... He stopped trying to wrap his mind around it. Why didn't you just hire a foreman or marry someone who knew ranching? I have 3 foremen, Lin Yu said, and I know ranching better than most men twice my age. What I needed was someone who wouldn't try to take it from me the moment we signed the papers. The pieces started falling into place, ugly and clear. You needed a husband who'd be grateful just to be here. I needed a husband who'd have no leverage, she corrected. No connections, no money, no reputation. Someone I could trust wasn't marrying me to get rich. Byron's hands curled into fists on his knees. So you bought yourself a nobody. I bought myself insurance, Lin Yu said, her voice hard. And before you get righteous, ask yourself why you came. Was it love, duty, or because you had nowhere else to go? The truth of it stung. Byron looked away, jaw working. She wasn't wrong. He'd come because staying meant starving, and leaving without a plan meant the same thing slower. The marriage was a lifeline, even if he hadn't known how much of one until now. They descended into the valley in silence. Ranch hands looked up as they passed, most of them Chinese men who nodded respectfully to Lin Yue. A few white men worked among them, their expressions carefully neutral. No one called out greetings or stopped to stare. They just worked, steady and focused. Lin Yue pulled the wagon up in front of the house and set the brake. She climbed down without waiting for help, and Byron followed. Up close, the house looked even sturdier. Thick walls, good windows, a porch that didn't sag. Lin Yue opened the door and stepped inside. The interior was simple but well kept. A large kitchen dominated one side, a sitting area the other. Stairs led up to a second floor. Everything was clean, functional, absent of frills. "Your room is upstairs, second door on the left," Lin Yue said, removing her veil and setting it on a table. "Mine is the first door. There's a washroom at the end of the hall." Byron stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder. "Separate rooms?" "Yes. People will talk." "People already talk, Mr. Calder. It doesn't concern me." She moved into the kitchen, filling a kettle with water from a pump. Byron watched her, this stranger he'd married, and tried to figure out what the hell he'd walked into. "Why did they stare at you?" he asked. "In town, they looked at you like I shouldn't exist?" Lin Yue finished. She set the kettle on the stove, her back to him. "Because in their minds, I don't. A Chinese woman running a ranch this size, unmarried, giving orders to white men, it offends them. They've been waiting 3 years for me to fail, or sell, or marry someone who'd take over. But you didn't." "No, I didn't." Byron moved into the room, pulled out a chair, and sat heavily. "So you married me to keep them waiting." "I married you because the law requires it." She turned to face him, leaning against the counter. "A woman alone, even with a deed, is vulnerable. Men like Victor Hale don't care about legal ownership when they think they can pressure you into selling." "Who's Victor Hale?" Lin Yue's expression darkened. "A land broker. He's been circling this ranch since my father died, trying to acquire the water rights. He's smart, connected, and patient. And he's convinced I'll break eventually." "Will you?" Her eyes flashed. "No." The kettle started to whistle. Lin Yue poured water into 2 cups, added tea leaves, and brought one to Byron. He took it, surprised by the gesture. "Thank you." She sat across from him, her own cup cradled in her hands. "I don't expect you to love me, Mr. Calder. I don't even expect you to like me. But I do expect you to work. This ranch doesn't run itself, and I need hands I can trust." "I can work," Byron said. "That's one thing I'm good at." "Then we'll get along fine." They drank in silence, the tea bitter and hot. Byron studied her over the rim of his cup. She wasn't what he'd expected, not soft, not desperate, not anything like the women he'd known. She was hard in the way the land was hard, shaped by wind and drought, and the kind of pressure that either broke you or made you unbreakable. "Can I ask you something?" Byron said finally. "You can ask." "Why me? I mean, really. There had to be other men who'd come with nothing and be glad for it." Well, Lin Yue set her cup down, her fingers tracing the rim. "Because your father owed mine, and because I believe debts should be honored, even when it's inconvenient. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting tonight." Byron almost smiled. Almost. Instead, he drained his cup and stood. "Which door did you say was mine?" "Second on the left." He headed for the stairs, then paused. "Lin Yue." She looked up. "I'll work. I'll keep my word. But I'm not your property." Something shifted in her expression. Not quite a smile, but close. "I know. That's why you're here." Byron climbed the stairs, found his room, and closed the door behind him. It was small but clean, with a bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the valley. He sat on the edge of the bed, boots still on, and stared at the floor. 300 miles. A stranger for a wife. A ranch he didn't understand and a life he hadn't chosen. He lay back, fully clothed, and closed his eyes. Somewhere below, he heard Lin Yue moving through the house, her footsteps light and sure. Tomorrow, he'd start figuring out how to live in this place. Tonight, he just needed to stop moving. The rooster crowed before dawn, a harsh sound that dragged Byron from sleep. He sat up, disoriented, then remembered where he was. He dressed quickly in the same clothes from yesterday, his only clean set, and headed downstairs. Lin Yue was already in the kitchen, dressed in plain work clothes, her hair in a single braid. She glanced at him. "You're late." "Late for what?" "Breakfast is at 5. Work starts at 5:30. Byron looked at the window. The sky was barely gray. "It's not even light out." "The cattle don't care." She handed him a plate, eggs, bread, and something that looked like dried meat. He ate standing up, too hungry to question it. Lin Yue poured coffee, strong and black, and handed him a cup. "You'll work with Chen today," she said. "He'll show you the property, explain how we run things. Pay attention. I don't repeat myself." "Yes, ma'am." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't correct him. "When you're done, meet me at the north pasture. We're moving the herd." Before Byron could respond, she was out the door. He finished his coffee, grabbed his hat, and followed. Outside, the ranch was already alive with activity. Men moved between the barns, horses stamped and snorted, and the smell of hay and livestock filled the air. A man approached, Chinese, middle-aged, with a face weathered by sun and wind. "You are Byron," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, sir." "I am Chen. Come." Chen walked fast, his stride efficient. Byron kept pace, taking in everything. The operation was bigger than he'd realized. Stables, workshops, storage buildings, all arranged with careful logic. Chen pointed out each structure, explaining its purpose in clipped, precise English. "Miss Lin runs tight operation," Chen said as they walked. "No waste, no laziness. You work hard, you eat well, you slack, you leave." "Understood." Chen stopped at a corral where several horses waited. He pointed to a sturdy bay. "That one is yours now. His name is Jasper. Good horse. Not fast, but steady." Byron approached the horse slowly, let it smell his hand, then ran his fingers along its neck. Jasper stamped once, but didn't pull away. "He'll do," Byron said. "You know horses?" "I grew up on them." Chen nodded, satisfied. They saddled up and rode out, Chen leading Byron along fence lines, past watering holes, through pastures thick with cattle. The ranch sprawled for miles, every inch of it carefully managed. Byron had worked big operations before, but nothing this organized, nothing this deliberate. "Miss Lin's father, he start with nothing," Chen said as they rode. "Build this over 30 years. Very smart man, very hard worker. When he die, people think ranch will fail. They wait for Miss Lin to sell. But she didn't. No, she make ranch better, hire good men, fix what was broken, expand herd." Chen looked at Byron. "People hate this. Chinese woman, successful, giving orders. They want her to fail." "Why do you stay?" Byron asked. "If it's that hard." Chen's expression didn't change. "Because Miss Lin is fair. She pay well. She protect her people. And because I owe her father my life, just like you owe him yours." Byron wanted to argue but couldn't. The debt was real, even if he didn't understand all its angles yet. They rode for hours, Chen explaining water rights, grazing rotations, and the delicate politics of neighboring ranches. By midday, Byron's head was spinning with information. They stopped to water the horses, and Chen handed him a canteen. "You do okay," Chen said. It sounded like high praise. "Thanks. But you need to understand something." Chen's tone sharpened. "Miss Lin, she is boss. Not you, not me, not anyone else. You want to survive here, you remember that." Byron took a long drink, then nodded. "I'm not here to take over." "Good. Because men who try, they don't last." They rode back in silence. When they reached the ranch, Lin Yue was waiting at the north pasture, mounted on a black mare that looked like it could outrun the wind. She saw them and rode over. "Chen, take the west fence crew and check the irrigation lines. We're losing water somewhere." "Yes, Miss Lin." Chen rode off without another word. Lin Yue looked at Byron. "Well, what do you think?" "It's big," Byron said carefully. "Bigger than I expected. And I've got a lot to learn." Lin Yu's expression softened, just barely. "At least you're honest. Come on, we're moving 300 head to the high pasture before the heat sets in." She didn't wait for agreement, just spurred her horse forward. Byron followed, and for the next 6 hours they worked alongside a crew of ranch hands, driving cattle through narrow passes and up steep trails. Linyu rode like she'd been born in the saddle, shouting orders, repositioning stragglers, never hesitating. The men obeyed her without question, their respect clear in every interaction. Byron stayed quiet, watched, learned. He'd done cattle drives before, but never under a woman's command, and certainly never with this level of precision. Lin Yue didn't tolerate mistakes. When one hand let a steer break from the herd, she reined up beside him and spoke low and sharp. Byron couldn't hear the words, but the man's face went red, and he didn't make the same mistake twice. By the time they penned the last of the cattle, the sun was setting. Byron's muscles ached, his throat was dry, and he was covered in dust. Lin Yue dismounted, handed her reins to a waiting hand, and walked over. "You kept up," she said. "Barely. But you didn't quit." She studied him, her dark eyes unreadable. "That's more than I expected." Before Byron could respond, one of the hands approached. A white man, older, with a scar running down his cheek. "Miss Lin, we've got a problem." Her expression didn't change. "What kind of problem, Davis?" "Fence down on the eastern border. Looks like it was cut." Lin Yu's jaw tightened. "Show me." Davis led them to the fence line where several posts had been knocked over and the wire cleanly severed. Lin Yui crouched, examining the cuts, her fingers tracing the edges. "This wasn't an accident," she said quietly. "No, ma'am," Davis agreed. "Someone wanted cattle to wander off. Or wanted a way in." Byron looked around, uneasy. "You think it's hail?" Lin Yu stood, brushing dust from her hands. "I don't think. I know. He's testing me, seeing how long it takes for me to notice, how fast I respond." "What do you want to do?" Davis asked. "Fix it. Postguards tonight, rotating shifts. And if anyone comes near this fence again, I want to know about it immediately." "Yes, ma'am." Davis left to organize the men. Lin Yu stood staring at the broken fence, her expression hard. "This happen often?" Byron asked. "Often enough. Hale's been pushing boundaries for months. Small things, damaged fences, missing cattle, blocked irrigation. Nothing I can prove in court, but enough to be a problem." "Why not confront him directly?" She looked at Byron like he'd said something incredibly naive. "Because men like Hale don't respond to confrontation. They respond to leverage, and right now he thinks he has more than I do." "Does he?" "Not anymore." She walked back toward the house, and Byron followed. The night had turned cold, the kind of high desert chill that came fast after sunset. Inside, Lin Yue lit lamps, and the warm light pushed back the darkness. "You should eat," she said, moving into the kitchen. "There's stew on the stove." Byron ladled out a bowl, his stomach growling. Lin Yu sat across from him with her own bowl, and they ate without talking. The silence wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it wasn't easy either. Byron kept sneaking glances at her, trying to figure out what she was thinking. Finally, she set down her spoon. "You did well today." "Thanks." "Don't let it go to your head. Tomorrow will be harder." Byron almost smiled. "I'm sure it will." Lin Yu stood, carrying her bowl to the wash basin. "Get some sleep, Mr. Calder. Morning comes early." She left the kitchen, and Byron heard her footsteps on the stairs. He finished his stew, washed his bowl, and followed. His room felt smaller than he remembered, but the bed was soft, and within minutes he was asleep. The days blurred together after that. Byron worked from before dawn until after dark, learning the rhythms of the ranch, the personalities of the men, the thousand small details that kept the operation running. Lin Yu was everywhere, checking fences, inspecting cattle, meeting with buyers, settling disputes. She never seemed to rest, never seemed uncertain. Byron started to understand the scope of what she'd built. The ranch wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Profits were steady, the herd was healthy, and the land was rich with water that neighboring ranches desperately needed. That water was the key, Byron realized. Control the water, control the valley. And Lin Yue controlled it all. But the pressure was constant. Fences kept getting damaged, cattle went missing, small fires broke out in storage sheds. Each incident was minor on its own, but together they formed a pattern. Someone was trying to wear her down. 3 weeks into the marriage, Byron was repairing a fence when he saw riders approaching. 5 men, well-dressed, riding expensive horses. At the front was a man in his 40s, handsome in a polished way, with silver threads in his dark hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Byron straightened, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle slung across his saddle. The man reined up, his smile widening. You must be the new husband. And you must be Victor Hale. Hale laughed, a sound like breaking glass. My reputation precedes me. Is your lovely wife available? She's working. Aren't we all? Hale dismounted, his men staying in their saddles. I thought I'd stop by and congratulate you both. Marriage is a beautiful thing. Byron didn't move. What do you want, Hale? Direct. I like that. Hale walked closer, his eyes cataloging everything, the fence, the land, Byron himself. I want to make your wife an offer, a generous one, enough to set you both up for life somewhere. Quieter. She's not selling. Everyone sells eventually, Hale said, his smile fading. The question is whether they sell on their terms or mine. That a threat? An observation. Hale remounted his horse, looking down at Byron. You seem like a reasonable man, Calder. A man who understands when he's out of his depth. Think about it. Talk to your wife. Help her see sense. He turned his horse and rode off, his men following. Byron watched until they disappeared, his heart pounding with anger he didn't fully understand. That night, he told Lin Yue about the visit. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. He's getting bolder, she said finally. What's his play? He wants the water rights. If he controls the water, he controls every ranch in the valley. He can charge whatever he wants, drive out competition, build an empire. Lin Yue stood, pacing. My father refused to sell, so Hale waited for him to die. Then he waited for me to fail. Now he's realized I'm not going anywhere, so he's trying a new approach. Through me. Through you. Byron felt a surge of anger. I'm not helping him. I know. Lin Yue stopped, looking at him directly. But he doesn't, and that's going to be a problem. She was right. Over the next few days, the pressure intensified. More fences were cut. Cattle were driven onto neighboring land, causing disputes. A well was poisoned, forcing them to dig a new one. Each incident cost time, money, and energy. Byron worked alongside the hands, repairing damage, standing guard, doing whatever needed doing. He and Lin Yue spoke little, but a kind of understanding grew between them, built not on words but on shared labor and shared frustration. One evening, Byron found her standing alone on the porch, staring at the valley. He joined her, leaning against the rail. You ever think about selling? He asked. Every day, she said quietly. It would be easier. Take the money, start over somewhere Hale doesn't reach. But you won't. No. She turned to look at him. This land is all I have of my father, all I have of myself. If I sell, I become nothing, just another woman who couldn't hold on. Byron understood that. He'd felt it himself, the weight of a name, a legacy, a promise. Then we hold on. We? You married me, remember? For better or worse. Lin Yu's expression softened, and for the first time, Byron saw something vulnerable in her eyes. I didn't think you'd care. Neither did I. They stood in silence, watching the sun set over the valley. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed, and the wind carried the smell of sage and dust. It wasn't home yet, but it was starting to feel like something close. And that, Byron thought, was when the real fight would begin. The next morning brought news that turned Byron's blood cold. Chen rode in fast, his horse lathered with sweat, and found Lin Yue inspecting the new well. Miss Lin, trouble. She straightened, reading his face. What kind? Hale filed papers in town. Claims your father's original deed has errors, says the water rights were never legally transferred. Lin Yue went very still. Byron, standing nearby with a shovel, felt something shift in the air, like the moment before lightning strikes. When did he file? Yesterday. Judge Morrison is reviewing it now. Morrison? Lin Yue said the name like a curse. Hale's cousin. Chen nodded grimly. Hearing is set for next week. Byron watched Lin Yue's face, expecting anger, maybe fear. Instead, she just looked tired. The kind of tired that comes from fighting the same battle too many times. Get the deed from the safe, she said quietly, and find every paper my father ever signed regarding this land. Bills of sale, water contracts, grazing agreements, everything. Yes, Miss Lin. Chen rode off. Lin Yui stood motionless, staring at nothing. Byron set down his shovel and walked over. Can he do that? Just claim the deed's invalid. He can claim anything he wants. Whether it holds up in court is another matter. She turned to face him. But with Morrison presiding, the odds aren't good. So we fight it. With what? A Chinese woman's word against a white land broker with connections? Her voice was flat, factual. The law doesn't favor people like me, Mr. Calder. Then we make it favor you. She looked at him like he'd suggested flying to the moon. And how exactly do we do that? Byron didn't have an answer. Not yet. But the helplessness in her voice, carefully hidden under layers of control, made him want to punch something. Or someone. Preferably Victor Hale. That evening, they spread the documents across the dining table. Deeds, contracts, receipts, 30 years of Lin Yu's father's meticulous record-keeping. Byron couldn't read half of it, the legal language too dense, but Lin Yu moved through the papers with practiced efficiency. Here, she said, pointing to a water rights agreement dated 1867. My father purchased the rights from the territorial government, completely legal. But the original surveyor made an error, marked the eastern boundary 50 feet off. She traced the line with her finger. It doesn't affect the water rights, but Hale will argue it invalidates the entire transaction. Byron leaned over, studying the faded ink. 50 feet, that's nothing. In court, it's everything. One mistake, and Hale can claim the deed is fraudulent. Your father didn't know about the error? Of course he knew. Everyone did. The territory issued a correction in 1869. She shuffled through the papers, pulled out a newer document. See? Boundary adjustment, signed by the territorial governor. So you have proof. I have paper. Whether a judge will accept it is different. Byron straightened, frustration building. This is insane. You own this land. Everyone knows it. Knowing and proving are two different things. Lin Yu gathered the papers into neat stacks. Hale's been planning this for months, maybe years. He knows exactly where the weak points are. Then we find his weak points. She looked at him, something shifting in her expression. Not hope exactly, but interest. What are you suggesting? I don't know yet, but men like Hale don't get this far without cutting corners. There's got to be something. Lin Yue studied him for a long moment. Then she stood, walking to the window. The valley stretched out below, darkening as the sun set. My father used to say that land brokers are like coyotes. They don't fight fair, and they always travel in packs. She turned back to Byron. Hale has lawyers, judges, connections. What do we have? Byron wanted to say something reassuring, something confident. Instead, he told the truth. Each other. It sounded weak even to his own ears. But Lin Yu's expression softened just slightly. That might have to be enough. The week crawled by. Lin Yu spent her days preparing for the hearing, organizing documents, rehearsing arguments. Byron threw himself into ranch work, partly to help, partly to avoid thinking about what would happen if they lost. The hands felt the tension. Conversations grew quieter, work more focused. Everyone understood what was at stake. 3 days before the hearing, Byron rode into Prescott to pick up supplies. The town felt different now, hostile in ways he hadn't noticed before. People stared, whispered. A shopkeeper he'd dealt with twice before suddenly couldn't make change for a $5 bill, forcing Byron to wait while he found coins that were sitting right on the counter. At the general store, Byron was loading flour sacks when he heard Hale's voice. Mr. Calder, what a coincidence! Byron turned. Hale stood in the doorway, blocking the light, 2 of his men flanking him. Up close, the man looked even more polished. Tailored clothes, clean hands, the kind of grooming that took money and time. Hale! I heard about the hearing. Unfortunate business. Hale stepped inside, running his fingers along a shelf. But necessary. We can't have unclear land titles in the territory. Bad for everyone. Byron kept loading flour. The title's clear enough. Is it? Hale picked up a can of peaches, examined it, set it down. Errors in surveying, questionable transfers, a Chinese immigrant's word against territorial records seems murky to me. What do you want? The same thing I've always wanted, to make this easy. Hale moved closer, lowering his voice. Your wife is a proud woman. I respect that. But pride doesn't pay bills. Pride doesn't keep a ranch running when legal fees pile up and neighbors start questioning your water access. She's not selling. Not to me, maybe. But what about to you? Hale smiled. You're her husband. Legally, you have claim to everything she owns. One signature, and it's all yours. Then you can sell to me, take the money, and start fresh somewhere without all this complication. Byron's hand stilled on the flour sack. You want me to steal from my own wife. I want you to be practical. The ranch is worth $200,000. I'm offering $3. That's 100,000 reasons to be smart, Calder. And if I say no, Hale's smile faded. Then you're a fool. And fools don't last long out here. He turned and walked out, his men following. Byron stood alone in the store, heart pounding, hands shaking with rage. The shopkeeper appeared from the back, his expression carefully neutral. That'll be $8 even. Byron paid, loaded the wagon, and drove back to the ranch. His mind churned the whole way. 300,000. More money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes. Money that could buy land, cattle, a real future. All he had to do was betray the woman who'd trusted him with nothing to gain. He found Lin Yue in the barn, checking a mare's hoof. She looked up when he entered. Did you get everything? Yeah. He set down the supply list, then hesitated. Hale was in town. Her hand stilled. And? Byron told her everything, the offer, the amount, the implication that he could take it all if he wanted. Lin Yu listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. When he finished, she released the mare's hoof and stood. 300,000, she said quietly. That's more than he offered before. I'm not doing it. Why not? The question caught Byron off guard. What? Why not? Lin Yu repeated, meeting his eyes. It's a fortune. Enough to buy your own ranch, hire your own men, build something without fighting for every inch. Because it's not mine to take. Legally, it is. I'm your wife. What's mine is yours. Byron stepped closer. That's not how this works. You brought me here because you needed someone who wouldn't steal from you. I'm not about to prove you wrong. Lin Yue held his gaze for a long moment. Then something in her expression cracked, just barely. Most men would take it. I'm not most men. No. Her voice softened. You're not. The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange. Byron didn't know what to call it. Trust, maybe. Or the beginning of something that could turn into trust if they didn't screw it up. Lin Yue turned away, busying herself with the horse's tack. The hearing is in 2 days. We should go over the testimony again. All right. They worked side by side until dark, not talking much, but the silence felt different. Less like strangers sharing space, more like two people trying to figure out how to stand on the same ground. The night before the hearing, Byron couldn't sleep. He stood on the porch, smoking a cigarette he'd bummed off Davis, watching the stars. The door opened behind him, and Lin Yu stepped out, wrapped in a shawl. Can't sleep either? She asked. No. She leaned against the railing beside him. Byron offered her the cigarette. She took it, inhaled, and handed it back. I haven't been completely honest with you, she said. Byron's stomach tightened. About what? About why I chose you specifically. Lin Yu stared at the valley. Your father didn't just owe mine money. He saved his life. Byron looked at her sharply. What? 30 years ago, my father was a railroad worker. There was an accident, a tunnel collapse. Your father pulled him out before the second cave-in. 6 other men died. My father lived because of him. Byron's cigarette burned forgotten in his hand. He never told me. Your father probably didn't remember. It was one moment in a hard life. But my father remembered. He built this ranch, made something of himself, and he never forgot the debt. Lin Yu turned to face Byron. When he was dying, he made me promise, find the son, offer him a life, pay back what can't be repaid. So this was charity? No. Her voice sharpened. This was honor. Your father saved my father's life. My father gave you a chance at a different one. That's not charity. That's balance. Byron didn't know what to say. He'd spent weeks thinking he was the bottom of the barrel, the desperate choice. Learning it was something else, something about honor and debts that stretched across decades. It shifted everything. Why didn't you tell me before? Because I needed to know what kind of man you were first. If you'd come just for the debt, that would have been one thing. But you came because you gave your word. That's different. Byron finished the cigarette, ground it under his heel. I don't know if I can help you win tomorrow. I know. But I'm going to try. Lin Yu nodded. That's all I can ask. They stood in silence, the night cold around them, and Byron felt something settle in his chest. Not certainty, not confidence, just the quiet knowledge that whatever happened tomorrow, he wouldn't face it alone, and neither would she. Morning came too fast. They dressed in their best clothes. Byron in a suit he'd borrowed from Chen, Lin Yui in a dark dress that made her look older, more severe. The ride into town was silent. Chen drove the wagon, while Byron and Lin Yue sat in back, surrounded by boxes of documents. The courthouse was small, crowded, and hot. People packed the benches, drawn by gossip and the spectacle of a Chinese woman fighting a white land broker. Hale sat at the front with two lawyers, looking relaxed and confident. Lin Yu took her seat across from him, her back straight, hands folded. Judge Morrison entered, a heavy man with a red face and eyes that didn't quite meet Lin Yu's. He banged his gavel, and the room quieted. Case of Hale versus Yue, regarding disputed water rights and land boundaries. Mr. Hale, you may present your claim. Hale's lead lawyer stood, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. Your Honor, the facts are simple. The original deed issued to Lin Yu's father contained significant errors in the boundary survey. These errors invalidate the water rights transfer, as the water in question falls outside the corrected boundary lines. He presented documents, maps, testimony from the original surveyor's assistant. It was smooth, professional, damning. Lin Yu listened without expression, making notes on a small pad. When the lawyer finished, Morrison turned to Lin Yue. Mrs. Calder, do you have representation? I represent myself, Your Honor. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Morrison frowned. You understand that's ill-advised? I understand that I can't afford a lawyer, Your Honor, but I can present the truth. Morrison sighed. Proceed. Lin Yue stood, gathering her papers. She was nervous. Byron could see it in the slight tremor of her hands, but her voice was steady. Your Honor, the boundary error, Mr. Hale's lawyer mentioned, was corrected in 1869 by territorial order. I have the documentation here. She handed papers to the bailiff, who passed them to the judge. The water rights were legally transferred after the correction. There is no dispute. Morrison barely glanced at the papers. The original error still stands on record. Only because Mr. Hale chose to ignore the correction, Lin Yue said. He's using a clerical mistake to steal land that legally belongs to my family. Objection, Hale's lawyer said smoothly. Inflammatory language. Sustained, Morrison said. Mrs. Calder, stick to facts. Lin Yu's jaw tightened. The fact is that my father purchased this land legally, paid for it in full, and maintained clear title for 30 years. The fact is that Mr. Hale has no legitimate claim. He's simply using his connections to... Mrs. Calder. Morrison's voice was sharp. I warned you. Byron watched Lin Yue struggle to control herself. She was losing, and she knew it. Morrison wasn't listening. He'd made up his mind before they walked in. Hale's lawyer stood again. Your Honor, if I may, Mrs. Calder has presented no new evidence. The territorial correction she references doesn't address the fundamental issue, that the original survey was flawed and subsequent transfers are therefore questionable. I've seen enough, Morrison said. Unless Mrs. Calder has something substantive, I do. Byron stood, his voice cutting through the room. Every head turned. Lin Yue looked at him, shocked. Morrison frowned. And you are? Byron Calder, Lin Yue's husband. This isn't a social visit, Mr. Calder. Sit down. With respect, Your Honor, I have information relevant to this case. Hale's lawyer was on his feet. Objection, Mr. Calder isn't a registered witness. He's the husband, Morrison said slowly. Technically, he has standing. What information, Mr. Calder? Byron's heart hammered. He had no plan, no strategy, just the memory of something Chen had said weeks ago and a gamble that might blow up in his face. Mr. Hale claims my wife's deed is invalid because of surveying errors, but he's filed 3 separate claims on the same land in the past 2 years, each using different legal justifications. If the deed was truly invalid, why would he need multiple approaches? The room went silent. Hale's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Morrison leaned forward. What are you implying? I'm implying that Mr. Hale knows the deed is valid. He's just hoping to find a judge who'll rule in his favor anyway. That's slander, Hale's lawyer snapped. It's public record, Byron shot back. Check the Territorial Land Office. 3 claims. 3 different arguments. Same result. All denied. Morrison's frown deepened. Mister, Hale, is this true? Hale stood, smooth as oil. Your Honor, I've pursued legal avenues to resolve what I genuinely believe is a clouded title. That's not improper. 3 times, Byron pressed. With 3 different legal theories, that's not pursuing justice. That's harassment. Lin Yue was staring at Byron like she'd never seen him before. Morrison shuffled papers, his face troubled. Mr. Calder makes a point. If previous claims were denied, on technicalities, Hale's lawyer interrupted, not on merit. Then let me add merit, Byron said. He turned to face Hale directly. You offered me $300,000 to convince my wife to sell. You told me I could take the land legally, as her husband, and sell it to you directly. The courtroom erupted. Morrison banged his gavel. Hale's face went rigid. That's a lie, Hale said coldly. Is it? Because I'm willing to testify under oath. Right now. Are you? Morrison banged his gavel again. Order! Mr. Calder, this is a serious accusation. Yes, sir, and I'll swear to it. Hale stood slowly. Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate attempt to... 300,000, Byron repeated louder. You said it was more than your previous offer, which means you've been trying to buy this land for a while, legal or not. Morrison looked between them, his expression unreadable. Finally, he set down his gavel. I'm going to review these documents more carefully, and I'm going to request the Territorial Land Office records Mr. Calder mentioned. This hearing is continued for 2 weeks. Your Honor, Hale's lawyer began. 2 weeks, Morrison said firmly, during which time the current deed stands. Dismissed. The gavel fell. The room buzzed with conversation. Hale stared at Byron with open hatred. Lin Yue grabbed Byron's arm, pulling him toward the door before anyone could stop them. Outside, Chen had his wagon ready. They climbed in and Chen drove fast, not stopping until they were miles from town. Only then did Lin Yue turn to Byron. What the hell was that? I don't know. I couldn't watch him win. You accused him of bribery in open court. He did try to bribe me. That doesn't mean you should have said it. But Lin Yue was smiling, fierce and bright. Do you have any idea what you just did? Probably made things worse. You bought us time. She grabbed his face, her hands cold. You stood up in front of everyone and called out Victor Hale. No one does that. Well, I just did. She kissed him, fast, hard, then pulled back, looking as surprised as he felt. Chen kept driving, his expression carefully neutral. Sorry, Lin Yue said. Don't apologize. They stared at each other, something shifting between them that Byron couldn't name but felt in his chest. Then Lin Yue laughed, the sound startled and genuine. We might actually survive this. Might, Byron agreed. They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was different now. Not uncomfortable, not distant, just 2 people sitting close, trying to figure out what came next. Back at the ranch, news of the hearing spread fast. The hands gathered, asking questions, and Lin Yue told them everything. When she got to the part where Byron stood up, Chen nodded approvingly. Good, he said simply. Hale needed someone to stand against him. Byron made him look like a fool, Davis added, grinning. I made us a target, Byron corrected. Hale's not going to forget this. Let him remember, Lin Yue said. We've got 2 weeks. That's time to prepare. For what? For whatever he throws at us next. That night, Byron lay awake, replaying the hearing. He'd acted on instinct. No plan, no backup. It could have gone wrong in 100 different ways. But it hadn't, and now they had time. He heard Lin Yue moving in the hallway, her footsteps soft. His door opened slightly, and she looked in. You awake? Yeah. She came in, sat on the edge of his bed. In the dim light, she looked younger, less guarded. Thank you, she said quietly, for what you did today. You would have done the same. Maybe, but you didn't have to. This isn't your fight. Byron sat up. Yes, it is. You made it mine when you married me. Lin Yu looked at him, her expression soft. I thought I was buying insurance. Turns out I got a partner. Is that what we are? I don't know what else to call it. Byron didn't either, but sitting there, close enough to touch, he thought maybe they'd figure it out, if Hale didn't destroy them first. Lin Yue left his room without another word, but Byron couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between them. He finally fell asleep near dawn and woke to Chen pounding on his door. Byron, come quick! He dressed fast, stumbled downstairs. Lin Yue was already outside, staring at the eastern pasture. Byron followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. 20 head of cattle lay dead in the grass, their bodies bloated in the early heat. The smell hit him a second later, rank and overwhelming. Poisoned, Chen said grimly. Water trough's been contaminated. Lin Yu walked toward the dead animals, her face carved from stone. Byron caught up to her, grabbed her arm. Don't, it's not safe. I need to see. Chen already checked. You don't need to. She pulled free, kept walking. Byron exchanged a look with Chen, then followed. Up close, the cattle looked worse, tongues swollen, eyes glassy, foam dried around their mouths. Lin Yue crouched next to the nearest one, her hand hovering over its flank but not quite touching. Strychnine, she said quietly. Quick, painful. Whoever did this wanted us to find them like this. Hale, Byron said. Probably, but we can't prove it. She stood, brushing dust from her dress. How many did we lose? 20 confirmed, Chen said. Maybe more in the back pasture. I sent Davis to check. 20 head was a fortune. Byron did the math in his head, felt sick. But Lin Yu's expression didn't change. She just nodded. Burn them. Don't let the other cattle near this water source. And post guards on every trough we have. Yes, Miss Lin. Chen left to organize the crew. Lin Yu stood staring at the dead animals, and Byron saw her hands shaking before she shoved them into her pockets. How much does this cost us? He asked. More than we can afford to lose right now. Her voice was flat, carefully controlled. Between legal fees, the damaged fences, and now this, we're bleeding money. Can we make it to the next hearing? If nothing else goes wrong. But nothing ever stays quiet for 2 weeks. She was right. Over the next 3 days, fires broke out in 2 storage sheds. A section of fence collapsed, letting 50 head of cattle wander onto a neighbor's land, causing a dispute that cost them both time and goodwill. The well they'd just dug started producing cloudy water, forcing them to dig deeper. Each problem was small on its own, but together they formed a pattern of constant, grinding pressure. Byron worked 18-hour days, putting out fires literal and metaphorical, and watched Lin Yue do the same. She was everywhere at once, directing crews, negotiating with neighbors, keeping the books balanced. He started to understand the scope of what she carried. This ranch wasn't just land and cattle. It was 30 years of her father's work, 3 years of her own, and the livelihoods of 24 men who depended on her decisions. One evening, Byron found her in the office, surrounded by ledgers. Her eyes were red, her braid coming loose. Papers covered the desk in chaotic piles. You need to sleep, he said. I need to figure out how to pay everyone this month. Byron pulled up a chair, sat across from her. How bad is it? Lin Yu pushed a ledger toward him. The numbers meant little to Byron, but he could read the downward trend. Income dropping, expenses climbing. If we sell some cattle now, we can cover it, she said. But that weakens us for winter. If we wait, we might not have anything to sell. What about taking a loan? From who? The bank won't lend to me. Too risky, they say, which means too Chinese, too female, too vulnerable. She leaned back, rubbing her temples. Hale knows this. He's counting on it. Push hard enough, long enough, and eventually I'll have no choice but to sell to him. So we don't give him the choice. How? Byron didn't have an answer. He wasn't a businessman, wasn't educated in finance or law. He was just a ranch hand who'd married into something bigger than he understood. But watching Lin Yu struggle alone made his chest ache. "Let me talk to the men," he said. "See if anyone will take delayed wages, just until we get through the hearing." "They have families. I can't ask them to." "You're not asking, I am." Lin Yu studied him, something unreadable in her expression. Then she nodded. "All right, try." The next morning, Byron gathered the crew. 12 men, Chinese and white, all watching him with varying degrees of curiosity and suspicion. He wasn't their boss, wasn't even really one of them. He was the outsider who'd married into ownership, and everyone knew it. "You all know the situation," Byron started. "Hale's pushing us. Legal fees are piling up. Cash is tight." Silence. A few men shifted uncomfortably. "Lin Yu won't ask this herself, but I am. We need to delay wages by 2 weeks. Just until we can get through the hearing and stabilize." More silence. Then Davis spoke up. "What happens if you lose the hearing?" "Then we're all out of work anyway," Byron said bluntly. "But if we can hold on, if we can get past this, Miss Lin will make it right. You know she will." "Easy for you to say," one of the white hands muttered. "You're married to the money." Byron turned to face the man, a kid named Garrett, barely 20, with an attitude that outweighed his experience. "You think this is easy? You think I'm sitting comfortable while you all work? Aren't you?" Byron crossed the space between them in 3 steps. Garrett tensed, but Byron didn't swing. He just got close enough that the kid had to look up to meet his eyes. "I've been here 6 weeks, Byron said quietly. "In that time, I've rebuilt fences Hale's men cut, dug wells, buried poisoned cattle, worked every day from before dawn to after dark. I've got nothing except what's in my saddlebag and the clothes on my back. So yeah, I married the boss, but I'm still out here bleeding same as you." Garrett's jaw worked, but he didn't respond. Byron stepped back, addressed the group again. "I'm not ordering anyone. You want to leave? Leave. But if you stay, we fight this together. And when we win, not if when, Miss Lin takes care of her people. Always has." The men exchanged glances. Finally, Chen spoke. "I will stay. Delayed wages are fine." One by one, the others nodded, even Garrett, reluctantly. Byron felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you." When he told Lin Yue, she just looked at him for a long moment. Then she went back to her ledgers without speaking, but Byron caught the slight tremor in her hands, the way she blinked too fast. He left her alone, understanding that some people needed privacy to fall apart, even just a little. That night, Byron was checking the horses when he heard shouting. He ran toward the sound, found 3 men on horseback near the main gate. Hale's men. Byron recognized one from the courthouse. "You're on private property," Byron called out. The lead rider, a heavy-set man with a scar through his eyebrow, grinned. "Just delivering a message." "What message?" "Mr. Hale says your 2 weeks are running out. Says you should think real careful about your next move." "Tell Hale we're thinking just fine." The scarred man's grin widened. "He also says to check your northern fence line. Seems like some cattle got loose." They rode off before Byron could respond. He found Chen, and they rode north together, lanterns swinging in the darkness. What they found made Byron's blood boil. Someone had cut a 100-foot section of fence and driven at least 30 head of cattle through it onto neighboring land. But not just any neighbor. This was property owned by a man named Cletus Marsh, who'd been feuding with Lin Yu's father for years over water access. If Marsh found cattle on his land, he'd be legally entitled to keep them until damages were paid. Damages Lin Yu couldn't afford. "We need to get them back before Marsh sees," Byron said. "Too late," Chen pointed. In the distance, lights appeared. Marsh and his men, drawn by the noise of loose cattle. Byron swore. "Stay here. I'll talk to him." "Byron, just trust me." He rode forward, intercepting Marsh before the older man reached the cattle. Marsh was in his 60s, leathered by sun and meanness, with eyes that assessed everything in terms of profit or loss. "Calder," Marsh said, not bothering with pleasantries. "Those your wife's cattle on my land?" "Fence was cut. Someone drove them through. Not my problem. They're on my property. They're mine until damages are settled." "You know we didn't do this on purpose." "Don't matter. Law's the law." Marsh spat into the dust. "Course, we could settle this reasonable like." Byron's jaw tightened. "How much?" $100. Cash." It was robbery, and they both knew it. But Byron also knew that fighting it would cost more in time and legal fees than they had. We don't have it tonight. Then I keep the cattle. Give me 3 days. Marsh considered, his face creased with calculation. 3 days. But the price goes up $10 every day I have to wait. Byron wanted to argue, wanted to tell Marsh exactly what he thought of him. Instead, he nodded. 3 days. He rode back to the ranch, furious and frustrated. Lin Yue was waiting on the porch, wrapped in a shawl against the night cold. Well? Byron told her. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable in the darkness. $130, she said when he finished. That's what it'll cost us by the time we can pay. I know. I'm sorry. I should have. You did what you could. She turned to go inside, then paused. Thank you for trying to negotiate instead of starting a fight. Byron followed her in. Marsh is in Hale's pocket, isn't he? Probably, or at least sympathetic. He hated my father, hates me worse. Lin Yue moved to the cabinet where they kept the ranch's cash box. She counted what was inside, her lips moving silently. We have $87. We're short. I could ride into town, try to sell something. What? We've got nothing to spare. She closed the box, her shoulders tight with tension. This is exactly what Hale wants. Death by 1,000 cuts. Keep hitting us until we can't afford to stand up anymore. Byron paced, his mind racing. They needed money, needed it fast. And the only thing of value he had was... He stopped. My horse. Lin Yue looked up sharply. What? My horse. The one I rode in on. He's a good gelding, well-trained. Someone in town would pay $50 for him, maybe more. Byron, no, that's your horse. And this is our ranch. The word felt strange in his mouth, but right. I'm not letting Marsh steal from us because I'm sentimental about an animal. You can use one of the ranch horses. It's not about that. It's about doing what needs doing. Lin Yue stared at him, something complicated moving through her expression. You really mean that? Our ranch. Don't you? She didn't answer. Instead, she crossed to him, stood close enough that he could smell soap and leather, and something floral he couldn't name. Her hand came up, hesitated, then touched his chest over his heart. When I married you, I thought I was buying security, she said quietly. Someone who'd be grateful enough to stay, but distant enough not to interfere. I didn't expect what? This. Her hand pressed flat against him. You standing up in court, working 18-hour days, offering to sell your horse. She looked up, and Byron saw something vulnerable in her eyes. I didn't expect you to care. Well, I do. Why? It was a fair question. Byron thought about it, tried to put words to the feeling that had been growing in his chest since that first day. Because you trusted me with nothing to gain. Because you're the strongest person I've ever met, and watching you carry this alone makes me want to help. Because this place, he gestured vaguely at the house, the land beyond. It's worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. Lin Yue's breath caught. Then she kissed him, harder than before, her hands fisting in his shirt. Byron responded without thinking, pulling her closer, tasting desperation and need and something that felt dangerously like hope. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lin Yue rested her forehead against his. We're probably going to lose, she whispered. Maybe. Hale has more money, more power, more everything. Probably. But you're staying anyway. Yes. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. Then we fight with everything we have. No holding back. Agreed. They stood there close and complicated, and Byron felt the last of his reservations crumble. This wasn't just about honor anymore, wasn't just about paying his father's debt. This was about Lin Yue, this fierce, brilliant woman who'd been fighting alone for too long. This was about proving that people like them, the outsiders, the unwanted, the ones the world expected to fail, could stand their ground and refuse to break. The next morning, Byron rode into Prescott and sold his horse for $65. The buyer was a rancher from up north who didn't ask questions, just inspected the animal and paid cash. Byron walked back to where Chen waited with the wagon, feeling lighter and heavier at the same time. Good horse, Chen said. Yeah. Miss Lin will replace him. I know. They drove back in silence. When they arrived, Lin Yue was in the yard and Byron handed her the money. She counted it twice, then looked at him. "Thank you." "Just doing my part." She shook her head. "It's more than that. You know it is." That afternoon they paid Marsh. The old man counted the money slowly, deliberately, making them wait. When he finally nodded and released the cattle, Byron had to physically restrain himself from saying something that would start a fight they couldn't afford. On the ride back, pushing the recovered cattle ahead of them, Lin Yu rode up beside Byron. 4 days until the hearing. I know. You think Morrison will rule in our favor? Byron thought about the judge's face, his hesitation, the way he'd looked at Hale. I think he'll do whatever keeps him comfortable, and ruling against Hale isn't comfortable. So we need to make it more uncomfortable to rule for him. How? Lin Yue didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was thoughtful. Hale's counting on this being simple. Chinese woman versus respected businessman. But what if we make it bigger? What if we make it about every rancher in this valley who's vulnerable to his tactics? Byron looked at her sharply. You want to bring in other ranchers? I want to show Morrison that ruling for Hale sets a precedent. That if he can steal land from me using survey errors and legal technicalities, he can do it to anyone. Make the other ranchers nervous. Make them pressure Morrison. Would they help? Most of them don't exactly like you. They don't have to like me. They just have to hate Hale more. Lin Yu's expression was calculating. And trust me, plenty of them do. Over the next 2 days, Lin Yu and Byron visited every major ranch within riding distance. It was uncomfortable, awkward work. Most ranchers looked at Lin Yu with barely concealed disdain, and Byron could see her swallowing anger with every forced polite word. But she pushed through, explaining Hale's tactics, showing how his claim could threaten anyone's water rights or boundary lines. Some ranchers shut the door in their faces. Others listened but promised nothing. But a few, the ones who'd dealt with Hale themselves, who'd felt his pressure, those few nodded slowly. You're saying if he wins against you, we're all vulnerable, said a rancher named Thompson, a grizzled man with 3 sons and a sharp mind. I'm saying the precedent matters, Lin Yu replied. Today, it's survey errors. Tomorrow, it's water access disputes. Next month, it's grazing permits. Hale doesn't stop once he starts. Thompson chewed his tobacco, considering. What do you want from us? Show up at the hearing. Let Morrison see that this isn't just about me. Let him know the valley's watching. And if we do, what do we get? Lin Yu met his eyes steadily. My word that when Hale comes for you next, and he will, I'll stand with you the same way. Thompson spat into the dirt. Your word's worth something, is it? More than his, the old rancher laughed, short and rough. All right, we'll be there. But you better win, Mrs. Calder, because if you don't, we're all in his sights. The night before the hearing, Byron couldn't sleep again. He found Lin Yue on the porch, same as before, staring at her valley. He sat beside her without speaking. Nervous? She asked finally. Terrified. She smiled slightly. Me too. You don't show it. I've had practice. Lin Yue leaned back against the railing. My father used to say fear is just energy. You can let it freeze you, or you can use it to move forward. I've always chosen forward. Even when forward means losing? Especially then. She turned to look at him. Because standing still means Hale wins without a fight. At least this way, we make him work for it. Byron reached out, took her hand. Her fingers were cold, calloused from work. She didn't pull away. Whatever happens tomorrow, he started. Don't, she interrupted. Don't give me a speech about how we tried our best. I don't want comfort. I want to win. Then we'll win. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll fight like hell to make it happen. Lin Yu's grip tightened. I know you will. That's why I'm glad you're here. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, cattle lowed and horses stamped and the ranch continued its endless rhythms. Tomorrow, everything could change. But tonight, they had this. 2 people holding on to each other against the weight of uncertainty. When Byron finally went to bed, he slept better than he had in weeks. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because he knew he wasn't facing it alone. Morning came cold and gray. They dressed in silence, Chen waiting with the wagon already loaded with documents. The ride to Prescott felt longer this time, every mile heavy with anticipation. The courthouse was packed, word had spread, and people came to watch, some out of genuine interest, most out of gossip hunger and the spectacle of potential failure. But scattered through the crowd, Byron recognized faces from the ranches they'd visited. Thompson was there, along with 2 other ranchers. Not many, but enough to make a statement. Hale sat at his table, flanked by lawyers, looking supremely confident. When he saw the other ranchers, something flickered across his face. Surprise, then calculation, then anger quickly smoothed away. He caught Byron's eye and smiled, cold and sharp. Morrison entered, and the room quieted. He looked older than he had 2 weeks ago, worn down by whatever pressures had been applied behind the scenes. Byron wondered if Hale had gotten to him, or if the territorial governor had weighed in, or if Morrison was just tired of the whole mess. "Before we begin," Morrison said, "I want to make clear that this is a legal proceeding, not a circus. I'll have order, or I'll clear the room. Understood?" Murmurs of assent. Morrison opened his papers. "Mr. Hale's attorney, you may present any additional evidence you've gathered." Hale's lead lawyer stood, and for the next hour he laid out a case built on technicalities, legal precedents, and carefully worded implications. The original survey error. The question of whether territorial corrections held the same weight as initial deeds. The suggestion, never quite stated outright, that a Chinese immigrant's claim should be scrutinized more carefully than others. It was smooth, professional, and damning. Byron watched Lin Yue make notes, her face expressionless. When the lawyer finally sat down, Morrison turned to her. "Mrs. Calder?" Lin Yue stood gathering her papers. She looked small, standing there, facing down men with more power and experience, but her voice was steady. "Your Honor, my opponent has presented a compelling argument about legal technicalities. But this case isn't about technicalities, it's about intent." She walked forward, laying out maps and documents on the table where Morrison could see them. "Victor Hale has filed 4 separate claims on my land in 3 years, each time using a different legal strategy, each time hoping to find a weakness he could exploit. That's not the behavior of someone pursuing legitimate grievances. That's the behavior of someone trying to steal land legally." "Objection," Hale's lawyer said. "Inflammatory, see?" "Sustained," Morrison said, but he sounded less certain than before. "Mrs. Calder, stick to fact. The fact is that my father's deed was corrected, properly filed, and accepted by the territorial government for 30 years. The fact is that Mr. Hale has presented no new evidence, just new interpretations of old errors. And the fact is," she turned to face the courtroom, "every rancher in this valley is watching this case because they know if Mr. Hale can do this to me, he can do it to anyone." Heads turned. Thompson stood. "She's right, Your Honor. We're here because Hale's been using these same tactics across the valley, going after anyone he thinks is vulnerable." Morrison's gavel came down. "Mr. Thompson, you're not a party to this case. Maybe I should be. Maybe we all should be. Because whatever you decide here affects all of us." Other ranchers stood. Not all of them, but enough. Morrison looked genuinely rattled now. "Order! I will have order." The room quieted, but the point was made. This wasn't just about Lin Yue anymore. Hale's lawyer stood, trying to regain control. "Your Honor, this is clearly a coordinated attempt to show you what's at stake," Byron interrupted, standing. "Judge Morrison, with respect, you have to see what's happening here. Hale's trying to create a system where anyone with better lawyers and more money can strip land from people who've owned it legally for decades." Morrison's face was red. "Mr. Calder, you've already testified." "I'm not testifying. I'm asking you to look at who benefits from your ruling. If you rule for Hale, he gets thousands of acres and critical water rights. What does justice get?" The silence was absolute. Hale stood slowly, his composure finally cracking. "Your Honor, I must protest this circus." "Sit down, Mr. Hale," Morrison snapped. The judge looked exhausted, angry, cornered. He shuffled papers, his hand shaking slightly. Finally, he spoke. "I'm going to make my ruling now." Lin Yu's hand found Byron's under the table, gripping hard. Byron held on, barely breathing. Morrison cleared his throat. "I've reviewed all evidence presented. The original survey error was corrected by proper territorial authority in 1869. That correction has stood for 30 years without challenge. Mr. Hale's claim that the error invalidates the deed is—" He paused, and Byron felt Lin Yu's nails digging into his palm. I, seen, without merit. The courtroom erupted. Morrison's gavel came down hard, but the noise didn't stop. People were shouting, some cheering, others protesting. Hale was on his feet, his face twisted with rage, barely contained beneath a veneer of civility. His lawyers were talking over each other, trying to salvage something from the wreckage. Byron couldn't hear any of it. He was staring at Lin Yue, who'd gone completely still, her hand still gripping his like she was afraid to let go. Her eyes were wide, disbelieving. "Did he just—" she started. "Yeah," Byron said, his voice rough. "He did." Morrison was still talking, his words cutting through the chaos. "Furthermore, I find that Mr. Hale's repeated attempts to claim this land constitute harassment under territorial law. Mrs. Calder's deed is valid, her water rights are secured, and this court will not entertain any further claims on this property without substantial new evidence. Case dismissed." The gavel fell again, final and absolute. Lin Yue's breath came out in a rush, and she sat down hard like her legs had given out. Byron kept holding her hand, anchoring her, while the courtroom devolved into controlled chaos around them. Hale shoved past his lawyers, striding toward their table. Byron stood, putting himself between Hale and Lin Yue without thinking about it. Hale stopped, his eyes cold and calculating. "This isn't over," Hale said quietly, his voice pitched low enough that only they could hear. "Yes, it is," Byron replied. "You think one ruling changes anything? You think Morrison's decision protects you?" Hale leaned closer. "I've been building empires in this territory since before you were born, Calder. You're an insect, and insects get crushed." "Then you better bring a bigger boot," Byron said, "because we're not going anywhere." Hale's smile was thin and sharp. "We'll see." He turned and left, his lawyers scrambling to follow. The crowd parted for him, and Byron watched him go, feeling the weight of that threat settle in his chest. Lin Yue stood, her composure returning in increments. "He meant that," she said. "I know. Morrison's ruling doesn't change who Hale is, it just makes him angrier. Let him be angry. We won." Lin Yue looked at him, and something in her expression cracked. "We won." She said it like she couldn't quite believe it. Then she was laughing, the sound startled and almost hysterical, and Byron found himself laughing too, the tension of the past weeks pouring out in a rush of relief that felt almost painful. Thompson approached, grinning. "Hell of a show, Mrs. Calder." "Thank you for coming," Lin Yue said, getting herself under control. "It made a difference. We look out for our own, even when our own is someone we don't always agree with." Thompson tipped his hat. "You need anything? You let us know." Other ranchers came forward, offering congratulations or grudging respect. Not all of them were friendly, and some looked like they'd swallowed something sour, but they acknowledged the win. Lin Yue handled each interaction with grace, even when Byron could see how much effort it cost her. By the time they made it outside, Byron was exhausted. Chen had the wagon ready, his face creased in what might have been a smile. "Miss Lin wins," he said simply. "We win," Lin Yue corrected. "All of us." The ride back to the ranch felt different, lighter. The landscape looked the same, harsh, beautiful, unforgiving, but it felt like theirs now in a way it hadn't before. Lin Yue sat close to Byron, not saying much, just existing in the moment. When they arrived, the crew was waiting. Someone had spread the news ahead of them, and the men were gathered in the yard watching. Davis stepped forward. "We heard, Miss Lin. Congratulations." "Thank you." Lin Yue climbed down from the wagon, surveying her people. "We have a lot of work to do. Fences to repair, cattle to move, winter to prepare for. But tonight, take the evening. Rest. You've earned it." The men dispersed, talking among themselves, their relief palpable. Chen unhitched the horses, and Byron helped, falling into the familiar rhythms of work. When the animals were settled, he found Lin Yue in the house, standing in the office, staring at the ledgers she'd been fighting with for weeks. "Thinking about money?" Byron asked. "Always." But her tone was different, less desperate, more calculating. "We can pay everyone now, cover the legal fees, maybe even have enough left over to hire 2 more hands for winter. That's good." "It's better than good. It's survival." She turned to face him. "We made it, Byron. Against everything, we actually made it." "You made it. I just helped." Lin Yu crossed the room, stood close enough that he could see the exhaustion in her eyes, the lines of stress beginning to ease. Don't do that. Don't diminish what you did. You stood up in court twice. You sold your horse. You worked yourself half to death keeping this place running while I fought legal battles. You made this possible. Byron didn't know what to say to that, so he just pulled her close, and she came without resistance, resting her head against his chest. They stood like that for a long time, not speaking, just breathing together. I'm scared, Lin Yu admitted quietly. Of what? Of Hale. Of what comes next. He's not the kind of man who accepts defeat. Neither are you. She pulled back just enough to look at him. What if he comes after you, to get to me? Byron hadn't considered that. The thought made something cold settle in his stomach, but he pushed it aside. Then I deal with it, same as everything else. You make it sound simple. It is simple, not easy, but simple. He brushed a loose strand of hair from her face. We protect what's ours. We stand together. We don't break. Lin Yue's eyes searched his. When did you start thinking of this as yours? I don't know. Somewhere between the poisoned cattle and the courthouse, I guess. And me? Her voice was soft, vulnerable. When did you start thinking of me as yours? Byron's throat tightened. The question was loaded, dangerous, but honest. Probably that first night when you told me about your father, about honor and debts and building something worth keeping. I just didn't realize it until later. Lin Yue kissed him then, slow and deliberate, and Byron responded, his hands settling on her waist. When they finally broke apart, both breathing harder, she rested her forehead against his. I don't know how to do this, she said. Do what? This. Be married for real, not just on paper. Let someone in. She laughed softly, bitterly. I've spent 3 years building walls, keeping everyone at distance. I don't know how to take them down. Then don't. Not all at once. Byron tilted her chin up, made her meet his eyes. We'll figure it out. Same way we figured out everything else. One day at a time. She nodded, and they stood there in the fading light, holding each other, trying to believe that the worst was behind them. They were wrong. 2 days later, Byron was in the north pasture when he saw smoke, black, thick, rising from the direction of the ranch house. His heart stopped. He spurred his horse into a run, covering the distance in minutes that felt like hours. The house wasn't burning, the barn was. Flames consumed the structure. The heat so intense Byron had to shield his face as he dismounted. Men were running, forming bucket lines, trying to save what they could. Chen was directing them, his voice hoarse from shouting. Where's Lin Yue? Byron yelled. Inside! Chen pointed at the barn. She went in for the horses. Byron's vision narrowed. He ran toward the flames without thinking, heard Chen shouting behind him, didn't care. The heat hit him like a wall, the smoke choking and thick. He pulled his neckerchief over his mouth and pushed through the entrance. Inside was hell. The fire had started in the hayloft and spread fast, consuming dry wood and straw. Horses screamed, panicked, slamming against their stalls. Byron couldn't see Lin Yue through the smoke. Lin! He shouted. No answer. He moved deeper, feeling his way along the wall. A beam cracked overhead, showering sparks. Byron ducked, kept moving. Then he saw her, on the ground, unconscious, blood on her temple. A fallen board lay next to her, one end charred. Byron grabbed her, hauled her up, and started back. The smoke was worse now, burning his lungs, making his eyes stream. He could barely see the entrance. Another beam fell, blocking the main door. Byron swore, turned, found the side exit they used for moving equipment. It was smaller, partially blocked by burning debris. Byron kicked through it, shielding Lin Yue with his body, and stumbled into open air. Hands grabbed them, pulled them away from the building. Byron collapsed on the grass, coughing so hard he thought his lungs would tear apart. Someone pressed water to his lips. He drank, spat, drank again. When his vision cleared, he saw Chen crouched next to Lin Yue, checking her pulse. She's breathing, Chen said. But she needs a doctor. How bad? I don't know. The wound on her head could be nothing, could be serious. Byron forced himself upright, ignoring the way his legs shook. Get her to the wagon. I'll ride ahead. Bring the doctor back. Byron, you can barely stand. Now, Chen. Chen didn't argue. He and Davis lifted Lin Yue carefully, carrying her toward the wagon. Byron caught one of the horses that hadn't been in the barn, mounted bareback, and rode for town like death itself was chasing him. The doctor was old, grumpy, and reluctant to make house calls. Byron didn't give him a choice. He half-dragged the man to his horse, got him mounted, and rode back with the doctor, complaining the entire way about proper medical protocol and payment in advance. By the time they arrived, Lin Yue was in the house, laid out on the dining table because it was bigger than the bed. Chen had cleaned the wound on her head, a nasty gash above her left eyebrow, still bleeding sluggishly. Her face was pale, her breathing shallow. The doctor examined her with practiced efficiency, checking her pupils, her pulse, the wound. Byron stood nearby, ash-covered and shaking, unable to look away. "Concussion," the doctor said finally. "Maybe worse. I need to stitch this wound and watch her for 24 hours. If she wakes up confused or can't remember things, that's a bad sign." "What if she doesn't wake up?" Byron heard himself ask. "Then we have a bigger problem." The doctor opened his bag, pulling out needle and thread. "Someone hold her steady. This is going to hurt, even if she's unconscious." Byron held her shoulders while the doctor worked. Lin Yue didn't stir, didn't make a sound. Byron counted each stitch, 14 total, and tried not to think about what would happen if she never opened her eyes again. When the doctor finished, he bandaged the wound and stepped back. "Keep her warm. Give her water if she wakes. Don't let her move too much. And someone needs to stay with her constantly." "I will," Byron said. "You should rest yourself. You inhaled a lot of smoke. I'm staying with her." The doctor sighed but didn't argue. He left instructions with Chen, accepted payment, and rode back to town. Byron pulled a chair next to the table, took Lin Yue's hand, and waited. Hours passed. The sun set. Someone brought Byron food he didn't eat and water he barely drank. The crew took turns checking in, their faces drawn with worry. Davis reported that the barn was a total loss, but they'd saved most of the horses. 3 had died in the fire, trapped in their stalls before anyone could reach them. "Any idea how it started?" Byron asked. Davis's expression darkened. "Not for certain, but someone found this outside, near where the fire was hottest." He held out a charred piece of cloth. Byron took it, examined it. Even burned, he could see it had been soaked in something. Oil, probably, or kerosene. "Arson," Byron said flatly. "Looks like it." "Hail." "Can't prove it. But yeah, probably." Byron's hands curled into fists. The cloth crumpled, fell to the floor. "Get the men. Postcards on every building, every pasture. Anyone sees strangers, I want to know immediately." "Already done. Chen's organizing shifts." "Good." Davis hesitated. "Byron, Miss Lin, is she going to be all right?" "She has to be." It wasn't an answer, but it was all Byron could manage. Davis left, and Byron returned his attention to Lin Yue. In the lamplight, she looked younger, vulnerable in a way she never allowed when conscious. Her hand was small in his, cool to the touch. "You need to wake up," Byron said quietly, "because I don't know how to do this without you. I don't know how to run this ranch, how to fight hail, how to keep everything from falling apart. I need you." She didn't respond. Byron rested his forehead against their joined hands and tried to remember how to pray. It had been years since he'd bothered, but desperation made believers out of everyone eventually. Near midnight, Lin Yue stirred. Byron's head shot up, hope flaring. Her eyes moved beneath closed lids, and a soft sound escaped her throat. Byron leaned closer. "Lin, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused and glassy. She looked at him without recognition, and Byron's heart sank. "Where?" Her voice was rough, barely audible. "You're home. You're safe. There was a fire. You got hurt." Lin Yue's brow furrowed, confusion crossing her face. "Fire?" "In the barn. You went in to save the horses. A beam fell, hit you. Do you remember?" She was quiet for a long moment, her eyes drifting closed again. Byron thought she'd lost consciousness, but then she spoke. "The black mare, did she—" "She's fine. Most of them are fine." "Most." Lin Yue's eyes opened again, sharper now. "How many did we lose?" "3. Pain flickered across her face. "3. That's—" She tried to sit up, gasped, fell back. Everything hurts. You have a concussion. The doctor said you need to stay still. The doctor? You brought the doctor all the way out here. Of course I did. Lin Yu's gaze focused on him properly for the first time, taking in his ash-covered clothes, the burns on his hands from where he'd kicked through burning debris, the raw look in his eyes. You went into the fire after me. Yes. That was stupid. Probably. You could have died. So could you. Byron's voice was rougher than he intended. You think I was going to stand outside and watch you burn? Lin Yu's hand tightened on his. The barn. How bad? Gone. Completely gone. She closed her eyes, processing the loss. The barn represented months of work, thousands of dollars, irreplaceable equipment. But when she opened her eyes again, they were clear, focused. Hale did this. We think so. Found evidence of kerosene. Can we prove it? No. Of course not. Lin Yue's jaw set. He's escalating. The court ruling didn't stop him. It just made him more desperate. Or more angry. Same thing with men like him. She tried to sit up again, slower this time. Byron helped her, propping pillows behind her back. The movement made her wince, but she didn't complain. How long was I out? About 10 hours. The crew? Scared, but working. Chen's got them on guard duty. Good. We need to... She stopped, her face going pale. I'm going to be sick. Byron grabbed a basin just in time. Lin Yu retched, bringing up nothing but bile. When she finished, she slumped back, trembling. Byron wiped her face with a damp cloth, trying to be gentle. The doctor said this might happen. Concussion. I hate this, Lin Yu said weakly. Being helpless. You're not helpless. You're hurt. There's a difference. Doesn't feel like it. Byron set the basin aside, took her hand again. You're the strongest person I know, but even strong people need time to heal. Lin Yue looked at him, something vulnerable in her expression. I'm scared, Byron. Really scared. Hale tried to kill us. If you hadn't gotten me out... But I did. This time. What about next time? He's not going to stop. The court ruling, the other ranchers supporting us, none of it matters. He's going to keep coming until one of us is dead. Byron wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong. But he couldn't, because she wasn't. Hale had crossed a line, and men who cross that line don't usually step back. Then we make sure it's not us, Byron said. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out, together. Lin Yu studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded, settling back against the pillows. Stay with me? I'm not going anywhere. She fell asleep holding his hand, her breathing evening out into something steadier. Byron stayed in the chair watching over her and tried to figure out how to fight an enemy who'd already shown he was willing to commit murder to get what he wanted. Dawn came gray and cold. Lin Yuo woke clearer-headed, though still weak. The doctor returned, examined her again, and declared that she'd probably survive but needed rest. Lin Yuo immediately started trying to work from bed, directing operations, making decisions. Byron had to physically remove papers from her hands. You need to rest, he said. I need to run this ranch. Chen and I can handle it for a few days. Byron, no. His voice was firm. You almost died yesterday. You get to be human for 48 hours. After that, you can go back to being invincible. Lin Yue glared at him, but there was no real heat in it. Fine. 48 hours. But I want daily reports. Deal. The next 2 days were a blur of activity. Byron and Chen organized the cleanup of the barn, salvaging what they could and making plans to rebuild. The crew worked with grim determination, everyone understanding that this was about more than just replacing a building. This was about refusing to be broken. Byron also started making inquiries, quiet ones through people who owed Lin Yue favors or who had their own grudges against Hale. What he learned wasn't encouraging. Hale had alibis for the night of the fire, multiple witnesses placing him at a poker game in town. His men had alibis too, all carefully constructed, all unassailable. On the third day, Lin Yue was up and moving, ignoring the doctor's protests and Byron's concerns. She was pale, still healing, but determined. Byron found her in the ruins of the barn, surveying the damage. Chen estimates $4,000 to rebuild, she said without preamble. We don't have it. We'll find it. How? We just paid off all the legal fees. We're tapped out. Byron had been thinking about this. We take a loan from the bank. The bank won't lend to me. We've been through this. They might lend to me. Lin Yue turned to look at him sharply. What? I'm your husband, white, male, connected to other ranchers now through the court case. The bank might see me as less of a risk. You want to put your name on a loan for my ranch? Our ranch, Byron corrected. And yes. Lin Yue was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was careful. If we default, they come after you. Your name, your credit, your future. You understand that? I understand. And you're willing to risk it anyway. Yes. She turned back to the ruined barn, her shoulders tight. Why? What do you get out of this, Byron? You've already done more than anyone could expect. You could walk away now, start fresh somewhere else, and no one would blame you. Is that what you want? For me to leave? No. The word came fast, almost desperate. But I need to understand why you're staying, why you keep betting everything on a ranch that might not survive and a woman you barely know. Byron moved to stand beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. I told you before, this place is worth fighting for. You're worth fighting for. And maybe... He paused, searching for the right words. Maybe I'm tired of running from things. My whole life, I've been drifting, no roots, no purpose, just existing day to day. This is the first time I felt like I belong somewhere, like I matter. Lin Yue looked at him, and Byron saw tears in her eyes that she refused to let fall. You matter to me, she said quietly, more than I thought possible for someone I married out of necessity. Same, she laughed, the sound watery. We're a mess, aren't we? Probably. But we're a mess together. Lin Yue leaned against him, and Byron put his arm around her shoulders. They stood in the ashes of what they'd lost, looking at what they still had to protect, and tried to believe they could make it through whatever came next. That evening, they sat down with Chen and Davis to make plans. The loan would take time to secure. The rebuild would take longer. In the meantime, they needed to fortify, to make it harder for Hale to strike again. Guards were doubled. The remaining horses were moved to a pasture closer to the house where they could be watched. Anything flammable was moved away from buildings. We're turning into a fortress, Lin Yue said, looking at their plans. Better a fortress than a grave, Byron replied. Chen nodded agreement. Hale will strike again. He has to. The court ruling damaged his reputation. The fire didn't break us. He needs a win. So we don't give him one, Lin Yue said. We stay vigilant, we rebuild, and we make it clear we're not going anywhere. And if that's not enough? Davis asked. No one had an answer for that, because they all knew the truth. Sometimes, no matter how hard you fought, the other side was just bigger, meaner, and more willing to destroy everything to get what they wanted. But they didn't say it out loud. Instead, they finalized their plans, assigned responsibilities, and tried to prepare for a threat they couldn't fully anticipate. That night, Byron found Lin Yue standing at the window of their bedroom. She'd insisted he move into the main room with her after the fire, saying she felt safer with him close. She was staring at the valley, her expression distant. Can't sleep? Byron asked. Too much to think about. He joined her at the window. The land stretched out below them, dark and vast under a sliver of moon. Somewhere out there, Hale was planning his next move. And somewhere closer, their crew was standing watch, trying to protect what they'd built. Do you ever regret it? Lin Yue asked suddenly. Coming here? Marrying me? No. Byron didn't hesitate. Do you? Marrying me? I regret that I brought you into this mess. That you're in danger because of choices I made. She turned to face him. But I don't regret you. I don't regret us. Byron pulled her close, and she came willingly, resting her head against his chest. They stood like that, holding each other against the darkness, and Byron made a silent promise. Whatever it took, whatever he had to do, he'd keep her safe. He'd keep their ranch safe. Because this place, this woman, this life they were building was worth any price. Even if that price turned out to be everything. The bank manager looked at Byron like he was trying to sell him swampland. The man, a portly fellow named Hutchins with spectacles that kept sliding down his nose, shuffled through the loan application for the third time, his expression growing more skeptical with each pass. "Mr. Calder, you understand that $4,000 is a substantial sum." "I do." "And you've only been married to Mrs. Calder for, what, 3 months?" "About that." Hutchins set down the papers, folded his hands. "I'll be frank with you, this bank has a policy against lending to operations we consider unstable. Your wife's ranch has experienced significant losses recently. The fire, the legal battles, the ongoing disputes with Mr. Hale. The court ruled in our favor," Byron interrupted. "Yes, but that doesn't address the fundamental concerns about management and security." Hutchins pushed his spectacles up. "Furthermore, there's the matter of Mrs. Calder herself. Her background, her gender, these are factors that complicate the risk assessment." Byron felt heat rising in his chest. "You mean she's Chinese?" "I mean, the bank has to consider all aspects of creditworthiness." "What if I personally guarantee the loan? Put my name as primary, not hers?" Hutchins hesitated. "That's unusual, but it might make a difference." He studied Byron. "You understand that if the ranch defaults, we come after you first? Your assets, your future earnings, everything." "I understand." "And you're willing to take that risk for a property you didn't build, for a woman you barely know?" Byron leaned forward. "That woman is my wife. That property is my home, and I'm willing to bet everything I have, which admittedly isn't much, that we'll pay back every cent, with interest." Hutchins was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed. "I'll need collateral beyond the ranch itself. Something liquid." "We don't have anything liquid. Everything's in land, cattle, equipment." "Then I'm afraid—" "Wait." Byron thought fast. "What about future contracts? We have standing agreements with 3 buyers for next year's cattle. That's guaranteed income." "Contracts can be broken." "Not these. They're signed, notarized. If we default on delivery, the buyers can claim the herd directly." Hutchins frowned, considering. "Let me see those contracts." Byron rode back to the ranch, got the paperwork from Lin Yue, who looked at him like he'd grown a second head when he explained what he was attempting, and returned to town. Hutchins reviewed everything with painful slowness. Finally, after what felt like hours, he looked up. "I can offer you 3,000, not 4, and the interest rate will be higher than standard, 12% annually." It was robbery, but Byron didn't have room to negotiate. "We'll take it. You'll need your wife's signature as well, as co-borrower. She'll sign." Hutchins prepared the papers. Byron rode home with them, found Lin Yue in the temporary workspace they'd set up while the barn was being rebuilt. She read through the loan documents twice, her expression growing darker with each paragraph. 12%, she said flatly. "That's extortion. It's the best we're going to get. And you put your name first, primary borrower." It was the only way Hutchins would consider it." Lin Yu set down the papers, looked at Byron with something complicated in her eyes. "If we fail, they destroy you first. You understand that? We're not going to fail." "You can't know that." "Yes, I can." Byron moved closer, took her hands. "Because we're going to work harder than we've ever worked. We're going to rebuild that barn, secure our contracts, and prove to every banker and land broker in this territory that we're not going anywhere." Lin Yu searched his face. "You really believe that?" "I have to. Otherwise, what's the point?" She pulled one hand free, picked up the pen, and signed her name below his. Her handwriting was precise, elegant. When she finished, she looked at the document for a long moment. "My father built this ranch on nothing but determination and stubbornness," she said quietly. "I've been trying to protect his legacy by myself for 3 years. But maybe—" She looked at Byron. "Maybe it's not just his legacy anymore. Maybe it's ours. And maybe I don't have to protect it alone." Byron pulled her close, and she let him, her forehead resting against his chest. "You don't. Not anymore." They took the signed documents back to town together. Hutchins reviewed them, had them witnessed, and handed over a bank draft for $3,000. It felt like both a fortune and nowhere near enough. On the ride home, Lin Yue was quiet, her hand resting on the draft in her pocket like she was afraid it might disappear. "We need to be smart about this," she said finally. "Rebuild the barn, yes, but also reinforce the other structures, better locks, fire breaks, maybe even a water tank on the roof. Agreed. And we need to talk about Hale. Lin Yu's jaw tightened. What about him? He's not going to stop. The fire proved that. We can fortify all we want, but eventually he'll find another way to hit us. So what do you suggest? We can't fight him legally anymore. We already won that battle. And we can't fight him physically without ending up in jail or dead. Byron had been thinking about this for days, turning it over in his mind. What if we don't fight him at all? What? What if we find a way to make him irrelevant? Take away the thing he wants most? Lin Yu frowned. The water rights. That's what he's after. Everything else is just tactics to get to that. Right. So what if we make it so he doesn't need to steal them from us? What if we offer to share? Are you insane? Lin Yu's voice rose. After everything he's done, you want to give him what he wants? Not give, share. Controlled access, at a price, with legal protections that prevent him from using it against us or the other ranchers. Lin Yu stared at him. That's actually not completely stupid. High praise. But Hale won't go for it. He wants control, not partnership. Maybe. But what if we make it more expensive to fight us than to work with us? What if we get the other ranchers involved, create a collective water agreement that protects everyone? A cooperative. Lin Yu's expression shifted, thoughtful now. Pool the water rights, distribute access fairly, charge fees for usage. It would stabilize the valley, prevent any one person from monopolizing the resource. And if Hale wants in, he has to play by the rules, same as everyone else. He'll hate it. Probably. But he's a businessman first. If the numbers make sense, he might take it. And even if he doesn't, we'll have the other ranchers on our side, which makes us harder to attack. Lin Yu was quiet, considering. Then she nodded slowly. It could work. But we'd need to move fast before Hale makes another move. And we'd need to convince the other ranchers to trust us. Thompson might help. He stood with us in court. Thompson's one man. We need at least 5 major ranches to make this work. Then we start with Thompson and build from there. They spent the next week traveling between ranches, presenting their proposal. It was exhausting, frustrating work. Many ranchers were suspicious, unwilling to tie their water rights into a collective agreement. Some flat out refused to work with Lin Yu under any circumstances. But slowly, carefully, they built support. Thompson came on board first, seeing the strategic value immediately. He brought 2 neighbors with him. A rancher named Sarah Colvin, a widow who'd been fighting her own battles with Hale over grazing permits, joined after minimal convincing. By the end of the week, they had 6 ranches committed, enough to make the cooperative viable. The meeting to finalize the agreement was held at Thompson's ranch, in a barn bigger than some churches. Ranchers crowded in, along with their foremen and lawyers. Lin Yu stood at the front with Byron beside her, facing down men who still didn't quite trust her, but needed what she was offering. The terms are simple, Lin Yu explained, her voice carrying across the space. Each ranch contributes their water rights to the collective. In exchange, you get guaranteed access at a fixed rate, legal protections against monopolization, and a vote in how the resource is managed. And if someone wants out, a rancher named Peters asked, there's a buyout clause, but it requires majority approval and fair market compensation. What about Hale? Sarah Colvin spoke up. Does he get access? If he joins the cooperative and agrees to the terms, yes, same as everyone else. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Someone called out, "You're giving him what he wants." No, Byron said, stepping forward. We're taking away his ability to steal it. Hale wants control. This gives him access, but not power. He'd be one vote among many, and if he violates the terms, he gets expelled. And who enforces that? Peters challenged. We all do, Thompson said, standing. That's the point. No one person controls the water. We protect it together, or we lose it separately. The debate went on for hours. Lawyers argued over language, ranchers haggled over fees and access schedules. But slowly, agreement emerged. By nightfall, they had a draft contract that everyone could live with. Not everyone was happy. Compromise never made anyone happy. But it was workable. As people filed out, Thompson pulled Byron aside. You know Hale's going to see this as a declaration of war, right? Maybe. Or maybe he'll see it as a smart business move. You're betting a lot on maybe. It's all we've got. Thompson nodded. Well, you've got guts, I'll give you that. And your wife, she's tougher than half the men in this valley. You're lucky. I know. The next step was approaching Hale. Byron insisted on doing it alone over Lin Yue's vehement objections. He tried to kill us, she argued. You're not going to his office alone. If we both go, it looks like we're afraid of him. If I go alone, it's just business. Byron? Trust me, please. Lin Yue looked like she wanted to argue further, but finally nodded. If you're not back by sunset, I'm coming after you with Chen and every man we have. Fair enough. Byron rode into Prescott the next morning, his stomach tight with nerves. Hale's office was above the land registry, in a building that screamed money and power. Byron climbed the stairs, ignored the secretary's protests, and walked straight into Hale's private office. Hale looked up from his desk, surprise flashing across his face before it settled into cold amusement. Mr. Calder, how unexpected. We need to talk. Do we? I thought the court settled our business. The court settled one issue. We're here about another. Byron closed the door, stood in front of the desk. The water rights. You want access. We're prepared to offer it. Hale's expression didn't change, but Byron saw interest flicker in his eyes. I'm listening. Byron laid out the proposal, the cooperative, the terms, the protections. Hale listened without interrupting, his fingers steepled in front of his face. When Byron finished, Hale was quiet for a long moment. You're offering me exactly what I want, but in a way that prevents me from controlling it. Yes, and you expect me to accept being one voice among many, subject to votes and collective decisions. I expect you to recognize a good deal when you see one. You get reliable water access without the legal battles, without the expense of trying to break us. You can focus on building your empire instead of stealing ours. Hale smiled, thin and sharp. And if I say no, then we move forward without you. 6 major ranches are already committed. That's enough to control most of the valley's water. You'll be on the outside, watching everyone else thrive while you fight for scraps. Or I could simply destroy the cooperative, pressure the other ranches to withdraw. You could try, but Thompson's not scared of you. Neither is Sarah Colvin, and after the court case, people are watching. You make a move against the cooperative, and everyone will know it's because you can't compete fairly. Hale's smile faded. He stood, walked to the window, looked out at the town below. Byron waited, his heart pounding. Your wife put you up to this, Hale said finally. This was my idea. Lin Yue thinks I'm crazy for offering you anything after what you've done. The fire, you mean? Hale turned to face Byron. You have no proof I was involved. Don't insult me. We both know you ordered it. Knowing and proving are different things, Mr. Calder, which is why I'm here making a business proposal instead of going to the sheriff. Byron stepped closer. You're a smart man, Hale. Smart enough to know when you've lost. You can't break us legally. You tried violence and it didn't work. So now you have a choice. Join the cooperative and get what you need, or keep fighting and eventually lose everything when the valley turns against you completely. Hale studied Byron for a long time. You've got more steel in you than I gave you credit for. I learned from the best. Your wife is a remarkable woman. Remarkable and dangerous. She's my wife, that's all that matters. Hale laughed, short and bitter. You actually love her. I didn't think that was possible in an arranged marriage. Byron didn't respond. Hale shook his head. All right. I'll consider your proposal. But I have conditions. Name them. I want preferential rates for the first year, and I want guaranteed access during drought conditions. Everyone gets guaranteed access during drought. That's the point of the cooperative, but we can negotiate rates. I also want assurance that this isn't some trick to destroy me financially. You have the same legal protections as everyone else. Same contracts, same terms. Hale considered. Give me a week to review the documents with my lawyers. You have 3 days. After that, we formalize the cooperative without you. You drive a hard bargain for someone who showed up in this valley with nothing. I had nothing to lose then. Now I do. That changes things. Hale's expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing his face. Indeed it does. 3 days then. Byron left before Hale could change his mind. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than usual, his mind racing with what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. But when he arrived and told Lin Yue what had happened, she just looked at him with a mixture of disbelief and admiration. He actually listened to you. He's a businessman. He can do math. Or he's planning something worse. Lin Yue paced the office. We need to be ready for anything. The next 3 days crawled by. The crew continued rebuilding the barn, working from dawn to dark. The frame was up now, solid and strong, better than the original. Lin Yue threw herself into the work, pushing everyone harder, including herself. Byron watched her, saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she startled at unexpected sounds. On the third day, a messenger arrived from Hale's office. Byron opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single page, Hale's signature on the cooperative agreement, along with a brief note. Your terms are acceptable. My lawyers will be in touch to finalize details. Regards, V. Hale. Byron stared at it, not quite believing what he was seeing. Lin Yue read it over his shoulder, her breath catching. He agreed, she whispered. He agreed. I don't understand. Why would he? Because we made it more profitable to work with us than against us. And because he knows we have the other ranchers now. Fighting us means fighting all of them. Lin Yue took the letter, read it again like the words might change. Then she started laughing, the sound slightly hysterical. We did it. We actually did it. Byron pulled her close, and she clung to him, laughing and crying at the same time. The weight of months of fighting, of fear and exhaustion and constant pressure came pouring out. Byron held her through it, his own throat tight with emotion he didn't have words for. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but clear. We need to tell the others. Formalize everything before Hale changes his mind. Agreed. The next week was a flurry of legal activity. Lawyers drafted final documents, ranchers signed agreements, and the Rio Verde Valley Water Cooperative became official. It wasn't perfect. There were disputes about fees and access schedules, arguments about governance and voting procedures, but it held together, bound by mutual need and mutual protection. Hale kept his word, staying within the bounds of the agreement. He didn't become friendly. That would never happen. But the attacks stopped. The sabotage ended. An uneasy peace settled over the valley, and for the first time in months, Byron and Lin Yue could breathe. The barn was finished in early October, just as the first cold winds started blowing down from the mountains. It was bigger than the original, with better ventilation and fire breaks built into the design. The crew celebrated with whiskey and stories, and Byron found himself genuinely happy for the first time since arriving. That night, he and Lin Yue stood in the finished barn, breathing in the smell of fresh wood and hay. Lin Yue ran her hand along one of the beams, her expression soft. My father would have liked this, she said quietly. He always said the best revenge was building something better than before. He sounds like he was a wise man. He was. Stubborn, difficult, impossible to argue with, but wise. She turned to Byron. I think he'd like you too. Even though I showed up with nothing? Because you showed up with nothing. He respected people who had to fight for what they got. Lin Yue moved closer, her hand finding his. Thank you. For everything. For standing with me when you had no reason to. For fighting when it would have been easier to walk away. I told you before. This is home now. You're home. Lin Yue kissed him, slow and deep, and Byron responded, pulling her closer. When they broke apart, both slightly breathless, she rested her forehead against his. I love you, she said simply. I didn't plan to. Didn't think it was possible. But I do. Byron's chest felt too full. I love you too. They stood there holding each other in the barn her father had built and they'd rebuilt, and Byron thought about how far they'd come. From strangers forced together by an old debt to partners who'd fought for every inch of what they had. It wasn't a fairy tale. There'd been no dramatic rescue, no perfect moments, just two imperfect people learning to trust each other, to stand together, to build something worth keeping. Winter came hard that year, but the ranch was ready. The cattle were healthy, the buildings secure, the water rights protected. The loan payments were manageable, and the cooperative was functioning better than anyone had expected. Life settled into new rhythms. Work, meals, evenings spent planning, or just sitting together in comfortable silence. In February, Lin Yu started feeling sick in the mornings. At first, she blamed it on something she ate, but when it continued for 2 weeks, she consulted the doctor. Byron was fixing fence posts when she rode back from town, her expression unreadable. "Well?" he asked, setting down his tools. "I'm pregnant." Byron's mind went blank. "You're what?" "Pregnant. About 3 months, the doctor thinks." He stared at her, trying to process the information. Lin Yu's expression was carefully neutral, like she was bracing for a reaction she wasn't sure she wanted. "How do you feel about it?" Byron asked carefully. Terrified, excited, overwhelmed. Lin Yu dismounted, stood close to him. "We didn't plan this." "No. But I want it. I want this baby. Our baby." Byron pulled her close, feeling something expand in his chest. "So do I." Lin Yu's arms went around him, tight and fierce. "Everything's going to change." "It already has," she laughed against his chest. "I suppose you're right." They told the crew that evening. The response was enthusiastic. Chen smiled so wide Byron thought his face might crack, and Davis organized an impromptu celebration that involved entirely too much whiskey. Even the men who'd initially been skeptical of Byron seemed genuinely happy for them. The months that followed were a strange mix of normal and surreal. Lin Yu continued working as long as she could, refusing to slow down despite Byron's increasingly worried protests. By May, she was forced to admit defeat, spending more time managing from the house than riding the property. Byron took on more responsibilities, working closely with Chen to keep everything running smoothly. Thompson stopped by one afternoon, ostensibly to discuss cooperative business, but really to check on Lin Yue. Byron appreciated the gesture, even if the old rancher tried to hide it under gruffness. "How's she doing?" Thompson asked as they walked toward the house. "Driving me crazy. She thinks she can still do everything herself." Thompson chuckled. "Stubborn runs deep in that one. Her father was the same way." He paused. "You've done well by her, Calder. Better than most thought you would." "Most thought I'd steal everything and run, you mean?" "Can you blame them? Strange arrangement, you showing up out of nowhere. But you proved yourself. That counts for something." Inside, they found Lin Yue arguing with Chen about whether she should be allowed to review the feed inventory personally. "Miss Lin, you need rest," Chen was saying patiently. "I need to know we're not being overcharged by the suppliers." "I checked the numbers twice. They're fair." "But, Lin," Byron interrupted, "trust him. You hired good people. Let them do their jobs." She glared at him, but there was no real anger in it. "Fine, but I want a full report tomorrow." "Deal." Thompson stayed for dinner, sharing news from the valley. The cooperative was working well, water access was stable, and even Hale had settled into grudging participation. There were still tensions, still disputes, but nothing that threatened to explode into open conflict. "You two created something good," Thompson said as he prepared to leave. "Not just the cooperative, this." He gestured at the ranch, at them. "Stability, partnership. That's rare out here." After he left, Byron and Lin Yu sat on the porch, watching the sun set over their valley. Lin Yu rested her hand on her swollen belly, and Byron covered it with his own. "Scared?" he asked. "Beyond words." "You?" "Same." "But also excited?" "Yeah, also that." Lin Yue leaned against him. "I keep thinking about my father, about everything he built, everything he sacrificed, and now we're bringing a child into it. Someone who'll inherit all of this. Someone who'll have two parents who love them and each other. That's more than either of us had." "True." Lin Yu was quiet for a moment. "Do you ever think about how this started? That ridiculous arrangement, you showing up to honor a debt you didn't even understand?" "Sometimes. Seems like a lifetime ago." "It was only a year." Byron thought about that. 1 year. In that time, he'd gone from a drifter with nothing to a rancher, a husband, and soon a father. He'd fought battles he never expected, built something he hadn't known he needed, and fallen in love with a woman who'd been a stranger forced into marriage. "Best year of my life," he said. Lin Yue smiled. "Mine too." The baby came in late July, arriving early and in a hurry that matched his mother's personality. Byron paced outside the bedroom for hours while the doctor worked, Chen standing silent vigil beside him. When the crying finally started, thin and furious, Byron nearly collapsed with relief. The doctor emerged looking exhausted. "Mother and son are healthy. You can go in." Byron entered to find Lin Yu propped up on pillows, holding a tiny red-faced bundle. She looked wrecked, hair plastered to her forehead, eyes shadowed with exhaustion, but she was smiling. "Come meet your son," she said. Byron approached slowly, afraid he might break something with his clumsy hands. But when Lin Yu placed the baby in his arms, everything else fell away. The child was impossibly small, impossibly perfect, with a scrunched face and tiny fists that gripped Byron's finger with surprising strength. "He's perfect," Byron whispered. "He's ours." They named him James, after Lin Yu's father, with the middle name Thomas, after Byron's. James Calder, an American name for a child who'd be both and neither, just like his parents. The ranch rallied around the new arrival. Chen carved a cradle from oak, every line precise and beautiful. Davis and the crew built a small addition to the house, a nursery with windows facing east to catch the morning sun. Sarah Colvin brought blankets her daughters had outgrown. Even Thompson stopped by with a stuffed horse that looked older than Byron. Hale sent a card. Just a simple congratulations, nothing more. But the fact that he'd acknowledged it at all felt significant. The first months were brutal. James didn't sleep, which meant neither did Byron or Lin Yu. They took turns walking him through the night, pacing the house while the baby screamed for reasons neither could decipher. Byron learned to change diapers one-handed while checking ledgers, and Lin Yu mastered the art of conducting business meetings while nursing. But there were good moments too. James's first smile, which he gave to Lin Yu while she was covered in spit-up and cursing at the laundry. His first laugh, startled out of him when Byron made a ridiculous face. The way he'd calm instantly when Byron sang, badly and off-key, but the baby didn't seem to care. Slowly, life found a new normal. The ranch continued its rhythms, now punctuated by feedings and diaper changes and the particular chaos that comes with an infant. Byron discovered he was good at this. The patience, the gentle handling, the willingness to be completely present. Lin Yu teased him about it, but he could see the relief in her eyes, the gratitude that she wasn't doing this alone. By the time James was 6 months old, Byron couldn't imagine his life any other way. The ranch was thriving, the cooperative was stable, and his family was healthy and whole. One evening, after getting James to sleep, Byron found Lin Yu in the office, reviewing contracts. He leaned against the doorframe, just watching her. She looked up, caught him staring. "What?" "Just thinking about how lucky I am." "Lucky?" She raised an eyebrow. "You married into chaos, fought off a land broker, nearly died in a fire, and now you're changing diapers 3 times a night. That's your definition of lucky?" "Yeah, it is." Lin Yu set down her pen, crossed to him. "You're an odd man," Byron called her. "And you're stuck with me. For better or worse." "Mostly better, though, right?" She kissed him. "Mostly." They stood in the doorway, arms around each other, listening to their son's soft breathing from the nursery and the familiar sounds of the ranch settling for night. Outside, the valley stretched dark and vast, full of challenges still to come and victories still to win. But they'd face them together, the way they'd faced everything else. Byron thought about that first day, riding into Prescott with nothing but a promise and a dead man's debt. He'd expected duty, a quiet wife, a fresh start that would probably end badly. What he'd gotten was Lin Yu, fierce, brilliant, impossible. He'd gotten a ranch worth fighting for and a son he'd protect with his last breath. He'd gotten a life he hadn't known he needed and a home he'd never expected to find. The arranged marriage had become something real. The stranger had become his partner. The debt had become a gift. And standing there, holding the woman he loved while their child slept and their land waited for morning, Byron understood what his father had known all along. Some debts can only be repaid with a life lived well. Some promises lead to destinations better than you could have planned. He'd come west to honor his father's word. He'd stayed because he'd found his own. And that, Byron thought, was the best kind of promise there was.